Oh, Adam,
Yeah, YouTube?
how about doing a theme for June?
Sounds great!
How about John Hughes movies?
But he wrote more than he directed.
That's okay. You can do ones he wrote too.
Gee, that's a great idea, YouTube.
Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome to Retro Rewatch. This time we are doing something for June, and I'm calling it JUNE-Hughes. It sounded really good in my head. It was really hard to say, JUNE-Hughes. Uh, I'm going back to revisit some movies that were written by John Hughes. Some of them he directed, not all of them. This idea was something that I just came up out of the blue while in the shower. I'm not sure what made me think of it in the shower. Maybe it was the shower scene in Weird Science. Maybe it was the 80s music I was listening to. Or maybe it's the universal belief that all good ideas come to you while in the shower. Whatever the answer is, it's a reality now. So let's begin. This is The Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club was the second movie that John Hughes both wrote and directed. His only movie that he directed and wrote before this was 16 Candles, a year earlier. So this is still fresh-faced director John Hughes. The movie was released in 1985, and it had got, you know, mostly positive reviews from critics and was vastly loved by teenagers and young adults throughout the 80s and probably still to this day. But when it came out, it was very well received. The movie stars a small cast of 7: Anthony Michael Hall, Judd Nelson, Molly Ringwald, Ali Sheedy, Emilio Estevez.
I was like, Emilio!
That makes up the titular Breakfast Club. And the other 2 cast members are Principal Vernon was played by Paul Gleason. May he rest in peace. And Carl the janitor was played by John Kapelos. I believe that's how you pronounce his name, Kapelos. I'm Greek. It sounds Greek. I should know how to say it, but I don't. Kapelos. Kapalos? Kapelos? Let me know in the comments how it is. I'm going to say Kapelos because it's just easy to say. And aside from a couple lines from the characters' parents in the beginning of the movie, that's about the entire cast. And by the way, little fun fact that Anthony Michael Hall's mom and sister play his mom and sister in the beginning of the movie. That's a little fact you can throw around there. But having just a small cast, mainly of 5 people, 6 every so often, 7 very, very, very rarely, is what gains the movie probably one of its biggest strengths. Is completely led by this cast. Imagine, if you will, 1985. Hell Valley. No, wrong movie. 1985. You hear about a movie about a group of kids who get Saturday detention in high school. Now, most would expect you would actually see scenes that lead up to the detention. You know, stuff that was caused by disruptions in the classroom or the hallway or the gym or any of that stuff. But no, we don't get that. What we get is 5 students whose characters' archetypes are unknown until they start talking, or in Ali Sheedy's case, not talking. This isn't going to be a normal retro rewatch video. I'm not going to do the whole, do I still love it? Because obviously the answer is yes, or I wouldn't be going off so much on this movie before I even get actually into the movie. This time I'm going to basically dissect what I take out of it as a 40-something watching a movie that I grew up with. I watched a lot growing up, from probably when I was too young to my actual teens, to my 20s, to my 30s. And I want to see if this is still the quintessential 80s teen movie. I'm not going to lie, this may get a little introspective. So you're probably asking yourself, what was it like being a middle-aged man watching a movie about teenagers set in the 80s? Did I still connect with the students? Do I see things from Principal Vernon's point of view? Well, let's find out. From the beginning, you know something is going to speak to you in this movie, whether it's the subtle "Don't You Forget About Me" score, or the David Bowie quote that pops up at the beginning of the film before it even gets going. After leaving their cars, all the students, all 5 of them, all of them, gather in the school library for Saturday detention and are told to write an essay on who they think they are, because that's how Vernon sees them. He only sees them as delinquents and nothing past that. But very quickly, we actually find out who these students are, or at least on their surface. They start talking. You start finding out their stereotypes of who they are. And we automatically assign them those stereotypes. Claire, a princess. Brian, a brain. Andrew, a jock. Allison, a basket case. Sorry, Allison. And Bender, a criminal. Not a robot.
The Breakfast Club soundtrack.
You mean Breakfast Club sandwich?
And that is exactly how they are portrayed in the first act. Most of the second act, too. But at the same time, they also act like real high school kids. They're all trying to impress each other. They're all trying to outwit each other and goof off with one another, no matter what the social caste. And that's what draws you to these characters. From their clothes to their lunches. We are made to accept them as we see them. Another thing is we can also connect to their early alliance against the principal, and how they just kind of meld as a group of peers being stuck in one place for the entire day.
Could you describe the ruckus, sir?
Watch your tongue, young man. Watch it.
Most of the first act is basically controlled by Judd Nelson. His character Bender is always loud. He's always obnoxious. He's always trying just a little too hard to be the bad boy. You know, he just wants to be noticed really a lot. Really a lot. That's what I just said. And that's probably not getting cut. No, it's not getting cut. Really a lot. But his acting like this is what keeps the entertainment going too, because it drives Vernon crazy. He does antics that the rest of the cast feed off of, and all Vernon is trying to do is keep order. And in fact, the most unbelievable character in the movie is Principal Vernon. I mean, Paul Gleason played him well. I mean, he plays everything that he did well. He had real good comedic timing, but his character was secondary to the ensemble he had with him. And it shows. He spills coffee on his lunch, which is disgusting black, just sludge. And he talks about that too. He's complaining, and he has the toilet seat cover on his pants during the ruckus. That's just not a believable character. It's the comic relief thrown in there to break up the tension that is happening with these kids. Most of them were in their 20s when they did this movie. In fact, right after this, God, who was it? It was Judd Nelson and Emilio Estevez. They were both playing college graduates in St. Elmo's Fire just a year later. So it was like a back and forth, almost like a cat and mouse game for the beginning between Judd Nelson's character and Paul Gleason's character. And they hated each other. The characters did. Now, this is a fun fact, too. Judd Nelson never broke character, even when they cut filming. He stayed in character the whole time on set, and the cast and John Hughes and everybody just absolutely hated him because he was playing John Bender in real life. Everybody hated that except for Paul Gleason. He didn't see it as unprofessional. He saw it as an actor trying to, hone his art. And it's just kind of cool hearing stuff like that, that the two people that hated each other in this movie that you're watching, that you've seen hundreds of times or less, that they actually understood each other in real life and got along better than their friends. As the film goes on, more and more is revealed about all of the characters, mainly due to Bender's questioning and his just flat out deductions on who they are, and just telling them that they are who they are, and it's the rest of the cast's job to explain that they're not the stereotypes that they got put into. And as the film goes on, Bender opens up as well, and you find out that he's just as vulnerable as anyone else, even under that hard candy shell. John Bender is an M&M. When the third act comes around, the cast has proven that they all have their own lives and issues. Some that can be helped by others, and some that can't. It shows no matter how you make it, life isn't always going to be sunshine and rainbows. Also, conversely, it also shows that not all the problems that you have as a teenager are going to end, or is going to be the end of the world. Well, let's say it that way. And these realizations are things that weigh heavy on an average high school student. And I believe that's why this movie still has the staying power to this day. It's something that, I took in. It's something that people younger than me have taken it in, talked about. It's the reason why it's still brought up as a important movie. One of the last big scenes in the movie is when they're just sitting on the floor upstairs talking. They're telling how they got the attention, what they did, how they lived their lives, and why they chose to do what they did to get thrown in there, to get the detention that they had. It's probably the most important scene of the whole movie. The whole movie builds up to this scene, and there is so much raw emotion. They go from laughing to crying, opening up and breaking down, yelling and smiling, and it's just so real. I mean, I still tear up when Brian talks about how he and Allison are the only ones not being ashamed to know them once Monday comes around, when they have to go back to their social cliques and stuff. And in fact, this is the scene where Brian, Anthony Michael Hall's character, gets his time to shine in the movie.
Okay, then I assume Alice and I are better people than you guys, huh? Us weirdos. Would you do that to me?
I don't have any friends.
Well, if you did.
No. I don't think the kind of friends I'd have would mind.
I just want to tell each of you that I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't, and I will not. Because I think that's real shitty.
He just spent an entire day with peers who would just assume to either ignore him or beat him up. But he found others like him on the inside. But they're all willing to go back to their cliques and the ways that they were, where he realizes he's stronger than the biggest egos in the room, and he calls him out on it. And it's a really pivotal, heavy scene. And in fact, it's the scene that turns everything on its axis. It makes them realize that, yes, they're friends. And maybe Monday will come around and they'll go off onto their things, but they'll still have that experience that changed them. And I think that would stick with them for a while. It might not happen right away, but I think they stayed friends. And I think later on in their life, they had a dance scene in a kitchen while making dinner in a big chill type scenario. I'm just rattling off 80s movies that no one remembers. But what makes this scene so powerful is that it is 100% improvised. John Hughes wanted real conversation, and he got real people reacting as real characters. He got exactly what he wanted, and he got exactly what we needed as characters. We're not characters. As viewers of this picture. If anything, this last scene of them talking, improvised, just goofing off and yelling at each other, becoming closer and closer, it makes the entire film. But everything leading up to this one scene is important too. Even the goofiness of them running through the hallways and making jokes and dancing. There's so much dancing in this movie. There's more dancing than I expected. But it's fun. That's the John Hughes part of it. But everything leading up to that scene is completely necessary. Another fun fact, talking about Anthony Michael Hall's character, Stanley Kubrick absolutely loved his performance in The Breakfast Club, and he tried as hard as he could to get him in the role of Joker in Full Metal Jacket, and it just did not happen, and he had to settle. He had to settle for Matthew Modine. I don't know what the movie would be like with Anthony Michael Hall instead of Matthew Modine, but if Kubrick thinks Matthew Modine is settling over Anthony Michael Hall, the film could have been probably even more impressive than it is already. But this movie still has a lot of weight, probably more now than then, because the world today is becoming more focused on everyone's differences over what brings us together. These 5 teenagers discover their entire world in one day, and it's so believable you believe that they did so. And you believe people can come together if they just open themselves up and be vulnerable. People are afraid to be vulnerable anymore. Another reason I think this movie carries so much weight is the score, or lack of it. The soundtrack is very minimal. The movie is scored by Keith Forsey, who wrote Don't You Forget About Me. And he wrote a lot of songs. He wrote Magic for Ghostbusters. He wrote The Heat Is On for Beverly Hills Cop. He's just a big music producer. He scored this movie only in parts that needed to be scored. There's a lot of silence in the movie. And it's right. It's right. You think of movies that need a score to keep the scene and emotion where it's supposed to be. That doesn't need to happen in this movie, in The Breakfast Club. The emotion and everything is just thrown at you by the realism of these characters. And the score only is there to emphasize certain parts and certain aspects of what they're talking about, what's happening, and not how to feel about the movie. That's one thing scores kind of do. They kind of force you to feel. But also the song soundtrack, the soundtrack, this one right here, the Breakfast Club soundtrack is one of my putting it back. Is one of my absolute favorite compilations of 80 songs.
Ah, the Breakfast Club soundtrack. Man, I can't wait till I'm old enough to feel ways about stuff.
And this is for those of you who know me. It contains Fire in the Twilight, which is my favorite song by Wang Chung. Also written by Keith Forsey. I know this video has gone a lot longer and it's a bit different than usual, but I appreciate you for sticking around and watching me wax philosophical over a 1985 teen high school movie. But I still believe The Breakfast Club is an important movie for for pretty much everyone open to seeing the message buried in each character. We are all people. Anyone can be an enemy or a stranger, but it takes more than just existing to become a real friend. And that's what the movie kind of teaches you. You know, there's people inside these stereotypes. So here's my take. Yes, I still love it. Yes, the characters are three-dimensional and real, and they still speak to me. No, I do not see anything from Vernon's point of view. Personally, I think his character was fired after that day, especially the janitor Carl, probably ratting him out since he didn't give him his $60. Or was it 50? I think it was 50. It's a movie that sits on my essential list, and I don't see it ever coming off of that list anytime soon. Thank you for joining me on the special journey. Oh, did you hear that? My voice cracked. And I hope you come along for the next movie in this John Hughes riddled JUNE-Hughes month that I just created. If you like this video and aren't subscribed, it would be really cool for you to hit that subscribe button, and also hit the bell so you know when the next John Hughes movie is going to be released. Not the new movie discussion. Sadly, we'll not see another new John Hughes movie. Rest in peace, John. Also, if you enjoy hearing me drone on about these movies, and you want to hear more, I don't know why, check out the podcast I do with my two good friends. It's the Cinemadness podcast, and it's on pretty much everywhere that podcasts are streaming, at least the major ones. Now, I know I'm doing it wrong, but let's see what's coming next. See the computer. Are we cutting? No, are we cutting? Cut it. I have to do it. There's nobody here.